I always thought the worst kind of pain was physical: broken bones, bruised skin, a cracked rib from a seatbelt that caught just in time. But I was wrong. The worst kind of pain is waking up in a hospital bed and realizing your family already left for the dream vacation you paid for with someone else. I didn't cry right away. I stared at the ceiling, numb as the painkillers dulled my body and sharpened the truth. I had planned the entire trip: private bungalows, ocean views, candle-lit dinners on the beach. It was supposed to be the break we all needed after a rough year. A gift from me, a gesture, a band-aid for all our wounds. All. And yet, they left me, just like that. Don't worry about anything, my mother had said, brushing her hand over my forehead like a nurse, not a mother. You just focus on resting, darling. We'll send pictures. That was the moment. The exact moment I realized I wasn't a daughter to them anymore. I was a sponsor, a caretaker, an ATM with a pulse. And just like that, they were gone. I could still smell the antiseptic in the room, cold and sharp, like the realization settling in my chest. The Maldives, my dream destination, our dream destination. A place I had spent months researching, saving for, obsessing over. I still remembered every booking confirmation, every deposit made. Every late night, I stayed up calculating what I could cut from my own life just so we could all go. Just so my family could have something magical, something beautiful, something to look forward to. And now, they were 30,000 feet in the sky, sipping sparkling wine, my sister giggling in first class, and I was here, hooked to an IV, staring at a beige wall. My hospital room didn't even have a window. The irony wasn't lost on me. You'd think a car crash would be the trauma. You'd think being hit by a truck while driving to meet a client would be the climax of some tragedy, but it wasn't. That was just the prelude. The real injury came later, when my mother walked in dressed in her vacation best and told me they were leaving anyway. "We can't waste the ticket," she said, eyes darting to her phone as if this conversation was simply cutting into her check-in time. My father didn't say much. He stood behind her, his silence louder than any excuse he could have mumbled. And my sister, oh, she smiled. She actually smiled. "I'll take lots of pictures," she said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "Don't be mad, okay? You'd want me to go in your place." I didn't respond, couldn't. The nurse came in seconds later, checking my vitals. I couldn't move my neck. My arms felt like weights. But the pressure in my chest, that was something no monitor could measure. I wanted to scream, but my throat was raw. I wanted to cry, but my eyes were dry. It was a strange kind of betrayal, one that doesn't explode, just unfolds slowly in your body like poison. They left that afternoon, and I laid there, alone, with the sound of a heart monitor and the hum of fluorescent lights as my only company. I think the mind plays tricks on you when you're in shock. It replays every moment like a cruel slideshow. I saw every time I paid their rent when Dad's consulting gig dried up. Every grocery run I made for them, my credit card maxed. Every therapy bill for my sister who claimed she was too fragile to work but always had the energy to post beach selfies. They had drained me, emotionally, financially, silently. And I let them, because that's what good daughters do, right? We sacrifice, we fill in the gaps, we pretend we're not falling apart as long as the people we love are okay. Only they were okay. They were more than okay. They were on their way to paradise. I pulled my phone from the plastic hospital bag. It was intact miraculously. I stared at the lock screen. It was still that family photo from Christmas. My hand trembled slightly as I deleted it. Then I scrolled to my email. The Maldives folder was still there, perfectly organized. It hurt just to look at it. But then something shifted. Maybe it was the painkillers, or maybe it was clarity, a fierce, almost primal instinct. If I was just the planner, the booker, the walking wallet, then maybe I'd act like it. So I started canceling things. Not out of pettiness, out of principle. The hotel was first. Five-star overwater bungalows reserved 6 months in advance. Gone with 2 clicks. No refund, of course, but that wasn't the point. Then the snorkeling excursion. The spa day I booked for mom. The private sunset yacht ride I scheduled for the last night. One by one, I erased it all. Each cancellation was like a stitch across an open wound, tightening something inside me. Every email I sent said the same thing: plans changed. And oh, how they had. When I finally closed my laptop, I didn't feel better. But I didn't feel powerless anymore either. That night I slept. Not well, but deeper than I had in weeks. The call started at 2:12 a.m. First it was my sister, then mom, then dad. By sunrise, I had 17 missed calls and 9 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. I couldn't. I didn't want their voices in my head. By breakfast, the text came: Isabella, what happened? Why is the hotel saying our booking is gone? Are you messing with the itinerary? We can't find our airport transfer. I read each one like I was watching a live documentary of entitlement unraveling. At noon, I got the first angry one. This is so cruel. I can't believe you're doing this to your own family. Ah, there it was. The guilt card, played flawlessly. But it didn't sting this time. Not like it used to. By dinner time, I had over 40 missed calls, 25 texts, and 3 voicemails, starting with tears and ending with screaming. I showed none of them to the nurse. But I did tell her what happened. Not everything, just the essentials: the crash, the trip, the betrayal. She looked at me quietly for a moment and said, Good, they don't deserve you. It was the first time I heard that sentence, and the first time I almost believed it. On the third day, my doctor confiscated my phone. He said it was interfering with my recovery. You need peace, he said, slipping the device into his pocket like a parent taking away a child's toy. Real peace. And strangely, I didn't argue, because without the phone, without the flood of demands, it was quiet. For the first time in a year, and in that quiet, people started to show up. Not the ones I gave everything to, but the ones I never expected. My coworker Nick brought real coffee smuggled in through a back entrance. Kareen came with fuzzy socks and gossip from the office. Brittany dropped off a book she thought I'd like and a card with half the marketing team's signatures. Even my cousin Mary, who lived an hour away and hadn't visited in years, showed up with homemade soup and an awkward smile. I heard she said simply, They didn't ask me for anything. They just sat, told jokes, listened. And it meant more than I could ever say. On the 5th day, my doctor gave me back my phone. You're stronger now, he said. Whatever's on there, you can handle it. I turned it on. Hundreds of missed calls. Texts, emails, voicemails, all from them. At first, they were confused, then outraged, then eventually desperate. We're stuck in some cheap hostel now. There's mold on the walls. Katie has bedbug bites. The hotel staff won't help us. They say the booking was canceled and flagged as fraudulent. We don't have a flight home. Each message was like watching them dig their own grave with golden spoons. My favorite was from Mom. We haven't had a single nice meal. We're eating from street vendors. Your sister is traumatized. I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied with 2 words. You're welcome. I never hit send. But it felt good just to type it. Later that week, my physical therapist helped me walk without assistance for the first time. 3 whole steps, and it felt like miles. They hadn't asked once about my injuries. Not once. No, how are you healing? No, do you need anything? Not even a, we're glad you're alive. It was almost poetic. They had been willing to take everything from me: my time, my money, my energy. And now that I refused to give anymore, they didn't know what to do. When they finally came back from their disaster of a trip, I was still in the hospital, still recovering, still exhausted. But something inside me had changed. And when the door opened, and they walked in still wearing the same designer travel clothes I'd bought them last Christmas, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt done. They looked sunburnt, angry, tired, but not remorseful. Do you know what we went through? My mother snapped before even sitting down. My sister dropped her suitcase, her lips pressed into a thin line. You ruined everything, she hissed. We didn't deserve that. I smiled. For the first time since the crash. And that's where I'll leave you for now. They stood at the foot of my bed like angry tourists who had just found out the hotel lost their luggage. My mom tanned but tense lips pulled in a sharp line. My sister arms crossed, refusing to meet my eyes. And my dad still silent, his guilt wearing the same shape it always had, avoidance. We didn't deserve that, Katie said again, her voice louder this time. You knew how much we were looking forward to this trip, and you ruined it. I tilted my head slowly, the pain in my neck reminding me that this body wasn't quite mine yet, not fully recovered. But my voice was ready. Ruined it, I repeated, keeping my tone flat. That's what you're here to say. After you left me in a hospital bed with a broken collarbone and fractured ribs? You want to talk about ruined. They flinched, all three of them. For a moment there was quiet. Then my mother recovered as she always did. Sweetheart, don't make this into something it's not. We were all in shock. We didn't think. You didn't think I interrupted. Exactly. Katie rolled her eyes. This is just like you, always the martyr. And that was it. The switch flipped. I sat up straighter, ignoring the scream in my spine. No, Katie. What I always was responsible. I planned the trip. I paid for everything. I covered your therapy bills for over a year while you turned down jobs because the vibes weren't right. I bought groceries, paid mom and dad's electric bill. I managed everything while you meditated and watched TikToks. That's not fair, she said, defensive. Fair, I laughed. You went on a luxury trip with my parents while I lay unconscious from a car crash. And you want to talk about fair? Mom stepped in, raising a hand. Isabella, this isn't healthy. You need to let go of this anger. No, Mom, I said, cold now. What's unhealthy is being used by the people who are supposed to love you. What's unhealthy is being treated like a service provider instead of a daughter. What's unhealthy is having to schedule the surgery around whether or not my family has time to care. You're being dramatic, Dad said softly. Finally, a word from him. And such a familiar one, too, used so many times in my childhood whenever I dared express an emotion. I turned to him. No, I'm being awake, finally. They didn't know what to say. The silence stretched so long it became a wall, and I let it. When the nurse knocked and peeked her head in, I didn't even look at them. I just said, Can you call security again? I think our conversation is over. Katie's mouth dropped open. You're kicking us out from your hospital room. No, I said, meeting her gaze, from my life. They protested, of course. My mother in a mix of shrill disbelief and faux sadness. Katie swearing that I was overreacting. My father murmuring something about being a family and needing to heal. But I had already pressed the call button. By the time the security staff arrived, I was calm. Numb almost. They were escorted out with less drama than I expected. But Katie turned back once before disappearing down the hallway. You'll regret this, she snapped. But I didn't, not then, not later, because something had snapped in me too, something that could never be unsnapped. 2 days later, I discharged myself early. My doctor wasn't thrilled, but I needed to leave that room. I needed space, even if it hurt to walk across it. When I stepped back into my apartment, it felt like arriving in a foreign country. Everything was still, untouched, and mine. The plants were alive miraculously. A note from Karina sat on the counter beside a bag of fresh fruit and a folded grocery receipt. They had cleaned the fridge, washed my dishes, changed the bed sheets, and suddenly I felt it, this soft, aching gratitude for the people who had shown up. The ones who weren't obligated, who weren't related to me by blood, who didn't ask for anything in return. That night, I blocked all their numbers. Mom, Dad, Katie. One by one, I erased them from my phone like stains I had scrubbed clean. I also canceled the automatic payments, no more transfers to their accounts. No more therapy fund, no more utility bills, no more gas money. My money was my own now. It felt like freedom. It also felt terrifying, but I didn't cry. Not even when I took down the last family photo on my wall, the one where we all wore matching sweaters pretending to be happy. I slipped it into a box labeled past, sealed it with tape, and shoved it under my bed. I started working remotely again the following Monday, just part time at first, then more. The rhythm of email threads, project plans, and deadlines grounded me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. My team, bless them, never treated me like I was broken. They gave me space, but they also gave me purpose. Brittany even started a running joke in our Slack channel, Isabella's Recovery Playlist, where they added memes, cat videos, and terrible inspirational quotes like, "You can't pour from an empty coconut." I laughed every time, and slowly I got better. I attended every physical therapy session, took the stairs when I could, made breakfast every morning, even if it was just toast and tea. I stopped waking up in panic. I stopped checking my phone for their messages. I stopped hoping for apologies that would never come. Then one afternoon, a package arrived. No note, just a bouquet of expensive orchids and a card that said, "Thinking of you, love, Mom." I threw them in the dumpster. The Facebook posts came next, of course. The curated grief, the sad selfies, the vague status updates that screamed for attention. Sometimes the people you love most hurt you the deepest. It's hard watching your own child turn away from you. I didn't engage, but Mary did. She wrote one sharp comment under my mother's longest post that said, "You left your daughter in the hospital and went to the Maldives with her money. That's not abandonment, that's abuse." I didn't ask her to, but I cried when I saw it because that's what real family does. They show up, even when it's messy, even when no one asks them to. The post was deleted an hour later, but it was too late. Screenshots lived forever, and the family group chat exploded. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me privately. Some were supportive, some were nosy. One of them said, "I always knew Aunt Linda was a bit intense." I didn't reply. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. Exactly 4 months after the accident, I walked back into the office for the first time. No cane, no brace, just me, alive, strong, whole. They had decorated my desk with balloons, a giant card, and a three-tier cake shaped like a cruise ship because, as Kareen joked, Maldives might be off the table, but we're still sailing through drama. I laughed until I cried. That night, I sat in my apartment with a slice of cake and opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for, but when I saw the same resort pop up, the one I had booked before with the overwater bungalows and turquoise waters, I didn't hesitate. Single traveler, one king bed, private patio, no guests. I booked it. Then I booked the activities, the snorkeling tour, the spa day, the sunset cruise. For me, only me. For the first time in a long time, I was planning something without apology, without compromise, and without guilt. And it felt damn good. The days counted down faster than I expected. The Maldives trip that once haunted me like a ghost in my inbox now felt like something else, like a door I had locked behind me only to find a better one just ahead. I didn't pack extravagantly, just two bathing suits, a few light dresses, my favorite oversized sunglasses, a worn journal I had been too afraid to write in since the accident, and one pair of heels I wasn't sure I'd wear, but packed anyway, just in case I felt like dancing with myself. At the airport, I didn't look over my shoulder, not to check for calls, not to imagine what my family would think if they saw me boarding that plane alone. I had already deleted their numbers, their emails, their ability to reach me in any meaningful way. All that remained now was silence. And in that silence, something else was beginning to grow, something stronger. The flight was long but peaceful. No crying baby, no stress over layovers, no anxious text threads to manage. I stared out the window at the endless ocean below, and for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel the weight of other people's expectations pressing down on my chest. I landed. The sky was pink with the last stretch of sun. The air smelled like salt and hibiscus. And when I stepped onto the wooden dock that led to my private bungalow, I felt something new. Not just peace, but ownership. This was my moment, my trip, my chapter. The room was exactly as I remembered it from the photos. Cream colored linens, a private deck, a ladder that descended into the crystal sea below. A welcome note sat on the bed, handwritten in calligraphy. Welcome back, Ms. Wilson. They didn't even question the cancellation months ago. They just welcomed me again, as if the place had been waiting. I spent the first day doing nothing, literally nothing. I lay on the sunbed, let the ocean breeze tangle my hair, let my skin warm without worrying about whether my sister needed more sunscreen or if mom was complaining about the heat. I ordered room service, took a nap, listened to the water slap gently against the deck pillars beneath me. And that night I cried, not out of pain, but release, because even paradise can feel lonely when you've been carrying wounds too long. Even joy can be unfamiliar when you've spent years surviving instead of living. But it passed, like a tide. And in the morning, I woke up lighter. The next few days unfolded like silk. I snorkeled with sea turtles and neon fish that looked like something out of a child's drawing. I ate grilled mango with fresh lime while dangling my feet off a pier. I let strangers take my photo, smiled into the sun, wore the ridiculous straw hat I had always wanted but never dared to buy. And I wrote pages and pages, not about them, but about me, about the girl who once thought love had to be earned through sacrifice. The woman who had built a career, paid every bill, held her family together with a glue made from silent suffering. I wrote about her grief, her rage, her rediscovery, her joy. On the fourth night, I attended a cooking class the hotel hosted on a private beach. Just me, a retired architect from New Zealand, a honeymooning couple, and a hotel staff member named Ravi, who laughed too easily and chopped vegetables like he was leading an orchestra. We made fish curry and ate under lanterns strung between palm trees. At some point during dessert, Ravi asked, "Are you traveling alone?" I nodded, first time. He smiled genuinely. "You wear it well." It wasn't a pickup line, just truth. I didn't deflect with jokes or stories. I just said, "Thank you." That night, I sat on my deck, legs curled beneath me, and watched the stars drip across the sky like spilled milk. I had never felt smaller or freer. On the last morning, I woke early, before sunrise. I dressed in white linen, tied my hair back, and walked barefoot to the water's edge. I carried with me a letter I'd written days earlier, sealed in a waterproof envelope. It wasn't long. Just a few sentences to each of them. Mom, Dad, Katie. Not for reconciliation, but for closure. I forgave them. Not because they asked, not because they deserved it, but because I needed to. Holding on to their choices was like drinking salt water. The thirst never left, only grew stronger. And I was done being thirsty for love that would never come freely. I slipped the letter into the ocean, let the current take it, watched it float until I couldn't see it anymore. And then I turned around and walked back to my room barefoot with wet ankles and dry eyes. When I got back to the mainland, I opened my phone for the first time in a week. There were messages, of course, some from cousins, a few from coworkers, and yes, two voicemails from unknown numbers. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. Instead, I sent one message to Mary. "You were right. I needed this trip, and I needed to let go." She replied almost instantly. "Proud of you. Come visit us soon. We're throwing a real family dinner. You're the guest of honor." I smiled, because sometimes family isn't blood. Sometimes family is built from kindness, from showing up, from making space when others tried to erase you. Weeks passed. I returned to work full time, took on new projects. My boss pulled me aside during a meeting and said, "I've never seen you this confident." I didn't correct him, because it wasn't just confidence. It was clarity. One afternoon, Karine found me in the break room staring out the window. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. I paused, then said, "Next trip." She grinned, alone again. I looked at her, then back at the window. No, not alone, but not with the wrong people either. She didn't ask who I meant. She didn't have to. It's strange how quietly a new life can begin. Not with fireworks, not with a grand declaration, but with simple, quiet choices that accumulate like raindrops until one day you look around and realize you're somewhere entirely new. That's how it felt in the weeks that followed my trip. I bought new furniture. Nothing fancy, just a reading chair by the window and a little teak wood table that made the apartment smell like forest after rain. I started cooking more, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And every Sunday, I walked to the park near my place, sat under the same tree, and journaled. Sometimes I wrote about the past, sometimes about nothing at all. But most days, I wrote about the future. Because now, for the first time, I had one that belonged entirely to me. I saw my family exactly once after the accident. It wasn't planned, just bad luck or maybe poetic timing. It was at my cousin Lara's wedding. I had RSVP'd months ago and almost backed out at the last minute. But Mary convinced me. Come for the cake, for the dancing, not for them. So I went. I wore navy, sleek, elegant. My hair in soft waves, a silver necklace I had bought in the Maldives resting against my collarbone. I looked like someone who had survived something and come out brighter for it. They saw me before I saw them. My mother froze her hand midair in greeting someone else. Katie narrowed her eyes as if I had just walked into a party I wasn't invited to. And my father looked old, much older than I remembered. I nodded once, no wave, no smile, just acknowledgement. Then I turned away. Mary handed me a flute of champagne. You handled that like a queen, she whispered. I'm tired of being their servant, I replied. Later that night, Katie approached me. It was at the edge of the garden near the lemon trees wrapped in string lights. You look good, she said cautiously. So do you? I lied. She shifted her weight awkwardly. Look, I know we haven't talked, and I know you're still angry. I'm not angry, I said, cutting her off. Her brow furrowed. You're not. I shook my head. Anger takes energy. I stopped giving mine to you a long time ago. She didn't like that, but she didn't argue. Instead, she sighed. I'm in school now, going back for counseling. That's good, I said, and I meant it. I wasn't vindictive, just done. I'm paying for it myself, she added quickly, like she needed credit. Even better. She looked away. I guess I thought maybe you'd be proud. That caught me off guard, because for years I had poured myself out trying to get even that one sentence from her, from any of them. And now that it came, I felt nothing. Not pride, not sadness, just space. I hope you figure things out, Katie, I said gently. But it's not my job to be proud of you anymore. That was a privilege, not a guarantee. She blinked, once, twice, then nodded and walked away. My parents didn't approach me that night, which was wise. The damage was done. The bridge was gone. There were no apologies in the world that could undo what they had shown me, not just once, but over and over again, that when forced to choose between comfort and compassion, they would always pick themselves. And I was finished begging them to change. That was the real healing. Not the physical therapy, not the vacation, not the months of silence. It was the final decision to stop asking people to become who they never had the courage to be. 1 year after the accident, I took a different trip. Not to escape, not to recover, but to celebrate. Greece this time. A little villa on the cliffs of Santorini with whitewashed walls and blue domed churches in every direction. I went with people who mattered: Mary, Corrine, and Nick. Yes, Nick from accounting, who had once snuck me real coffee into the hospital, now sat beside me at a rooftop cafe, pouring wine and making bad jokes about tourists who didn't know how to pronounce tzatziki. He was more than a coworker now. Not yet something else, but maybe, possibly, eventually. I didn't need to name it. What mattered was the energy, ease, laughter, warmth. No expectations, no transactions, just presence. And on the final night, as we watched the sunset bleed into the sea, Corrine clinked her glass against mine and said, You know you're different now. I smiled. Better or worse? She thought for a moment. Quieter, clearer, like you're finally living in your own body. I let that sit because it was true. I no longer looked for permission. I no longer asked for space. I took it. I no longer worried about being enough for anyone. Because I had learned the hardest, brightest, most painful lesson of all. Sometimes you have to lose the people you thought were your world to find the one person you were always meant to come home to yourself. When I returned from Greece, a letter was waiting in my mailbox. Real mail, handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the writing. It was from my father. 3 pages. No excuses, just memories. The day I was born. The way I used to crawl into his lap with a storybook. The time I stayed up with him all night when he was sick, just holding his hand because I was afraid he'd disappear. And then at the very end, I don't know how we got so used to you fixing everything. I don't know how I let your mother convince us it was okay to leave you behind. But I know we broke something that day. And if I never hear from you again, I just want you to know I remember who you were before we made you become someone else. I read it twice, then folded it and placed it in the back of my journal. Not to forgive, not to reconnect, but because sometimes people surprise you not with change, but with clarity. And me, I keep traveling. Not always far, sometimes just to the next town, a cabin, a bookstore, a small beach with quiet waves. I keep writing. I keep dancing. And yes, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and think about that moment in the hospital when they turned to leave, when they chose the Maldives over me. But I don't cry anymore because in that moment I thought I was losing everything. But really, I was being set free.